Can you make it like full size, occupy the whole screen? If not, we can go with this. Okay. Anyway, thanks everyone for inviting me back. This will be a short presentation, about 10 minutes. The subject is Japan's ongoing defense buildup. My only introduction to that is to say that Japan, which for decades after World War II has had a well-deserved reputation for being a very peace-oriented country, today is engaged in the biggest defense buildup it's ever experienced since the end of World War II. Next slide. Japan has an interesting constitution, which has an article, Article 9, which, as it says, forbids Japan from having armed forces. Over the decades since then, Japanese governments have interpreted that to mean that Japan couldn't have an Army, Navy, or Air Force, but it could have a ground, maritime, and air self-defense force, legally a kind of super police force. And it's under that kind of interpretation that Japan has today very effective armed forces. Next slide. There are a lot of people in Japan who are not too happy about the ongoing defense buildup because they remain very, very wedded to the peace constitution. This is an ongoing debate in Japan. Let's just say that polls show and elections show that a majority of voters do support this defense buildup. Next slide. Japan is facing a growing security threat. Overwhelmingly, it's China's increase in military power. The United States is reacting to that. Other U.S. friends and partners are reacting to that. But the most important ally that the United States has in Asia, without question, is Japan.
Yeah.
And what Japan does in defending itself matters hugely to the United
Rotary.
States. Next slide. Quickly, we're going to go through the three parts of Japan's armed forces. The first is the ground self-defense force, that's the Army. All the pictures of weapons that you see in the next few slides are made in Japan. They're designed and built in Japan. They're not American weapons that Japan bought, although Japan has plenty of those. These are examples of what Japan has done by itself. Next slide. Here's the equivalent of the Navy, the Maritime Self-Defense Force. Japan has two small aircraft carriers, and it operates probably the world's best non-nuclear submarines. Next slide. And the Air Self-Defense Force. The Air Self-Defense Force flies F-15s and some other aircraft, cargo planes, etc. And they're about to embark on a really ambitious new program to build a very futuristic fighter, which I'll mention in a moment. Next slide. This, if you can see this, I'll point it out with my fingers. This gives you an example of the historic increase in Japan's defense budget. This is the world's biggest defense spenders. US on the top, as you can see. China number 2. Number 3 currently is Japan. That's an unusual position for Japan to be in. It's never been number 3 before. Followed by Russia, India, Saudi Arabia, and the Europeans. Next slide. And this just shows you, as a percentage of GNP, this is Japan's defense spending, which historically was always below 1% for political reasons. Boom, jumped up to 1.5. It's now exceeded 2%. And this is the dollar value of what is being spent. You can see the huge increase just in the last 3 years. Next slide. I'm going to talk very briefly about some of the capabilities that Japan is going to build here. The most, probably the most significant and the one that really is the biggest change for Japan is what's called standoff capability. The ability for Japan to launch strikes using aircraft and missiles away from its own shores, hundreds and hundreds of miles away from Japan. For political reasons, Japan always decided not to have that kind of capability until now. Now it is building that kind of capability. It's doing that because it reasons that it's not enough just to wait until the threat or the attack comes and hits Japan. If the circumstances are right, Japan needs to be ready to strike an enemy that is assembling power to strike Japan. In other words, to hit the enemy first. Next slide. This is a graphic that shows the different kind of standoff systems, missiles launched from aircraft, missiles launched from the land, or from ships at sea. Next slide. Japan's building a much more integrated air defense missile system using some of its own systems and some systems purchased from the United States. Next slide. Unmanned. Japan is becoming a bit of a world leader in pioneering new unmanned aircraft. Some of this is because probably most people know that Japan is facing a demographic decline. There are just not enough people in Japan, not enough new births. And the self-defense forces are doing their best to cope with a decreasing number of recruits into the military. So they're emphasizing more and more unmanned systems. Next slide. Cross-domain capability space. This means that Japan is building a much more robust system of military and defense reconnaissance satellites orbiting Europe. Next slide. Cyber. Japan is vastly increasing its cyber defense capabilities. Next slide. EW, electronic warfare. It's hard to get your mind around what is electronic warfare. It encompasses things like jamming enemy radars, enemy communications, so that they become paralyzed and can't coordinate their attack against you. This is another capability that Japan historically really has stayed away from. They viewed it as being too warlike, you might say, or too belligerent. Now Japan is recognizing this is a necessary part of the modern military, and they're building out an EW capability themselves. Next slide. They're increasing equipment acquisition. They're certainly buying more from their own industry. They propose to buy more from the United States. It's worth noting here that Japan and the U.S. have enjoyed a cooperative defense production relationship for a number of years. And in fact, some parts of the Patriot missile system that's in such high use in Ukraine and against the war in Iran, some of the major sub-assemblies are made in Japan. They go on to U.S. missiles. One other thing to note is, I won't bore you with the details of the different types of Patriots, but one type, the PAC-3, that is useful against other missiles, the U.S. is in short supply, and recently Japan, for the first time ever, shipped a whole weapon that it had made, and it shipped it to the United States. Japan is actually helping the U.S. by shipping weapons it has made to the U.S. for our use. Next slide. Japan is building the capability to move its own forces around much better using helicopters and aircraft. Next slide. Okay, I want to dwell on this for just a moment. Japan has joined with Italy and the United Kingdom to form a three-nation partnership to build a future so-called sixth-generation fighter plane. This program is called GCAP, Global Combat Air Program. It's the first time that Japan has ever joined with a country other than the United States to build a new weapon system. First flight, or the first operational capability of this new fighter is supposed to be 2035. The program is still in the basic design stage. Next slide. This simply shows that Japan is trying to nurture its own defense industry more than it has in the past. Next slide. That's basically what I wanted to run through. I promised you it would be fairly quick. But I think if you look at all this, it presents a picture of a key U.S. ally that is a home of high technology, is a resolute government that is determined not to be taken advantage of by growing Chinese military power, and is doing something about it. The U.S. is, as you can imagine, is warmly welcome what Japan is doing. And we will see the fruits of that effort slowly begin to emerge over the next 5 to 6 years. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to field them. Yes, sir.
I'm gonna cheat. Are they gonna get nukes, and will they defend Taiwan?
The first part of the question, will Japan get nuclear weapons? I think it's safe to say that right now, that is a political non-starter in Japan. Any politician who openly said we should acquire nuclear capability would receive a huge backlash. I think Japanese people are willing to exhaust almost every possibility before going down that road. The memory of Hiroshima and Nagasaki is still very strong. And I think most Japanese are justifiably proud about the strong image and role that Japan has played since World War II in being a peace-loving country that tries to promote peace globally. Sorry, what was the second one?
Taiwan, they defend Taiwan.
Okay, well, I think the answer unquestionably is yes. Now, we could have a discussion, what does it mean to defend Taiwan? In December of last year, Prime Minister Takaichi was asked a question in the Diet, Japan's Congress. The question was, if China were to undertake aggressive actions against Taiwan, would that be detrimental to Japan's security? Sounds like a no-brainer, I think, to an American audience. Sure it would be. Taiwan's only a few hundred miles from the southernmost Japanese island. She said yes, it would be a threat to Japan's security. Xi Jinping went ballistic over this. He accused Japan of being a warmonger for saying that. He ordered Chinese tourists to stop visiting Japan. He's undertaken economic sanctions against Japan, etc. And of course, the Chinese Communist Party dominated media immediately said Japan's trying to go back to the 1930s. It's on another path to war. It wants to make war on China. This is all ridiculous propaganda overstretch. But I think it's virtually certain Japan at a minimum would pose no obstacle to the U.S. using its power that's based in Japan to defend Taiwan. I personally think Japan would go well beyond that and actively take part in defending Taiwan if we're looking at something like an invasion scenario. So that's how I look at it. Yes, sir.
Can you comment on the perceived or actual harassment of some of the Japanese islands by China and Russia?
Sure. The main islands that are, you might say, intruded upon, that Japan administers, that China intrudes in, are called the Senkaku Islands. These are located to the west of Japan, kind of between Japan and Korea and China. They're uninhabited. If you look at a picture of them, these are big rocks there in the ocean. There's not even enough flat land to build a house. But because of the UN protected exclusive economic zones around national territory, if a country has an island or a small group of islands in a certain part of the ocean and can claim a 200-mile economic zone around them, that gives the owning country a lot of economic advantage for like underwater mining and fishing. China routinely comes very, very close to the Senkakus. Japan protests, the Chinese Coast Guard and Navy escort their fishing boats around there. Japan sends its Coast Guard boats to keep an eye on them. The Chinese go away, the Japanese go away. The U.S. position on this is we don't recognize anyone's sovereignty, certainly not our sovereign territory. But we do recognize that Japan is the administering power, and we oppose any change to the status quo by force. So that's where we come out. Yes, sir.
Can you comment on Japan's economic circumstance today and the threat to the U.S. In its huge holdings in U.S. assets?
Right. Well, this is really appropriate right now, today, this week, because Japan wants to support yen, which has really declined in value precipitously over the last few years. And over the last month or two has really gone down. It's crossed the 160 yen to the dollar barrier. Japan holds one of the largest supplies of U.S. Treasury notes of any foreign country.
The largest.
And the largest. The feeling in the U.S. Treasury was that Japan might start selling some of these U.S. Treasury bonds to support the yen. And that's something that the U.S. doesn't want to see happen. We don't want to see a run on U.S. Treasuries. The Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent last week, was it last week or the week before, engineered a buy of the yen. It's an intervention in the currency exchange market, which, as is typical for such interventions, had an immediate beneficial effect. The yen went back to something like 153 yen to the dollar, and that's lasted about 2 weeks. Usually these interventions are very short-lived. Today in the news, there's rumors again that Japan is looking at selling some U.S. treasuries. This is a big deal. Japan has no wish to inflict economic pain on the United States. On the other hand, it does feel a special need to support the yen as it gets weaker and weaker. I don't know where this is going to go. Okay, I think that's all we have time for. Thank you very much for your patience.